In the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not.
And we are back. You're drinking beer, or iced tea, or tea, or bourbon.
Ginger ale.
That was the only thing I didn't consider.
Mm-hmm.
So, welcome back to Doomed to Fail. We're joining you on a sunny Wednesday. It is lovely.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to cover a Taylor-specific topic, which is going to probably involve... give me a clue. Give me one clue.
Well, I can tell you what my drink is.
Is it ginger ale?
No, it's a barraquito, which is a coffee cocktail made with espresso, condensed milk, liqueur 43, whipped egg whites, and sweetened milk.
Let me look at it. This looks... Why doesn't everybody make this? I've never seen this before.
I feel like you would like it because you love an espresso. You love an espresso martini, a coffee flavored booze.
Yeah, definitely. This looks incredible. I'm gonna order one of these the next time I go out to drink, which is probably tomorrow.
And they're gonna be
okay.
like, "What are you talking about? I don't have any egg whites."
So your drink is a barraquito. I'm looking it up, and it looks like it's very famous in Tenerife, and Tenerife is a topic that I covered. So I doubt you're covering the plane crash again because
I'm not.
Okay, so
But I am. I'm going to go back to Tenerife and talk about the ancient people that lived there before the Spanish conquest.
Got it. Okay.
Cool.
All right. Yep.
Because I'm looking at my list, and I have a culture on my list that I wanted to talk about. They were eradicated by the Spanish in the 1400s. And then when I was reading more about it, I realized that they are the pre-Hispanic natives of Tenerife. So they are the Guanches people. Guanches comes from the words Guan and Anchinette, which mean person of Tenerife. So the people who live there, sort of. So this is...
So we're basically covering the people that called in a terrorist attack that caused the accident in Tenerife.
Kind of.
Got it.
I'll tell you about that group and like what they want. But there aren't really there aren't Guanches people really left, but there is a bunch of like DNA stuff to figure out like where they came from and who they were. We don't know a ton about them, but they were essentially like a Stone Age civilization that lived on the 7 Canary Islands. And they were eradicated during the Spanish conquest that lasted from 1402 to 1496.
Okay.
Cool. So some people think this is like fun things that are not true, but they are like the original people of Atlantis because they were like tall and like bigger than like other people. There are sculptures on Tenerife right now. They are made by the sculptor Jose Abad in 1993. So they're not ancient sculptures, they're new sculptures, but they make them look dope as shit. They're like big and strong and like have like spears. They look like, the people in Aquaman, essentially.
Wait, how do I find that?
Look up Guanches, Guanches statues. They'll show you those 7 statues. They're big bronze statues.
Ooh, those look cool.
They look cool. The Canary Islands themselves, there are 7 islands. They are from largest to smallest: Tenerife, Fuerteventura, Gran Canaria, Lanzarote, La Palma, La Guerma, and El Hierro. And they are way closer to Africa than I thought. I don't know if when you were looking at the Tenerife Airport disaster, did you notice how close they were to Africa and not that
No.
close to Spain? So they're like Spain and Africa, like nearly touched by like the Strait of Gibraltar, right? That's what that is. And then right below that, the Canary Islands are like not next to Spain, they're next to Africa.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. Yeah.
They are volcanic islands.
Oh, wait, okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so yeah, it's like it's more Middle Eastern,
Yes.
but it's on Africa. Yeah.
It's like Northern Africa. It's northern.
Right.
Yeah. So they are volcanic islands, and they come from a group of underwater mountains. And the highest peak on the Canary Islands is a volcano on Tenerife. So someday, fingers crossed, we can talk about it again when it erupts. But right now, it hasn't erupted in like 30,000 years. But
damn it,
it could happen. The word canary comes from canaria, which is Latin for dog, which is not what I expected.
Yeah, that seems it's like calling a dog a canary.
I thought it was like canary, like it had a lot of birds, but it had a lot of dogs, so
I would have absolutely assumed that.
I was wrong. And you know how we know it had a lot of dogs? Guess who wrote about it 2,000 years ago?
Pliny the Elder.
He did. Yep.
Guys everywhere.
Everywhere. He didn't go there, but he had information about it. They were visited by the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the Romans, like they had been there. It doesn't sound, well, here's what we don't know. This is like a big bunch of shit that we don't know. But when Pliny the Elders heard about people going there, he heard that they got there and there were ruins. And this was like in like zero, like year zero-ish. So getting there, there were ruins of a civilization. So at some point, some people must have lived there and then disappeared.
Right.
But we don't know anything about those people because they're the people we know about. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the people we know about, the Guanches, they probably moved there between like 500 and 1000 BC. So they were there maybe after or during another civilization living there, probably after a first one did. We don't know anything about that one. They got there from Northern Africa. They are part of the Berber ethnic group, and Berbers are pre-Arab North Africans. So they're like Stone-aged Africans, similar to, and like they have similar cultural things to the Egyptians. They like mummified their dead, which we'll talk about. And Berber is also a slur from the Romans, meaning barbarian, essentially. And so it means like a whole bunch. It's not like one group, it's a whole bunch of these like Northern African tribal people, pre-Arab.
They look like me.
They look like you. Yeah.
I look
That
like
definitely makes
everyone.
sense. Yeah.
Wait, Taylor, real quick.
Hmm.
Side story. When I was at Dollywood, there was this part that had like all these paintings you could go by, and it was all
Hmm.
about Jesus. And so
Hmm.
Jesus was painted into like every like it was hidden. He was hidden in all the paintings, and all these people were like just shelling out all their money to buy these paintings of like a hidden Jesus to find. And I was like, Rachel, like, should I tell these people that he looks more like me than what this guy's painting? And she's like, they will absolutely tar and feather you.
They don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it.
I think you're a little too tall to be Jesus, even.
Yeah.
Oh man, wait, the kids have an orchestra. They're in like an orchestra. Florence plays the violin, and it's at a church, and there's like this hilarious painting of Jesus where he is like 100% flirting with you. He looks like a dude in Brooklyn, and he's just like, "Hello." You're like, "Oh God,
Like, why does he have abs? Like, why does he need a six pack?
why do you look like that, Jesus?" Yeah, no, totally. Yes, they look like you. They're Middle East, Northern African people, like Moroccan people, like that's where they came from. They got there on boats because it's an island. So how else the fuck did you get there? They got there on boats, but they never left. So the seven different islands had different groups of people. Like they couldn't even really talk to each other, and they didn't really travel back and forth because they didn't have boats. They didn't have any navigational system. So at some point, they were forced to the Canary Islands. So it could have been like the Romans made these specific tribes of people leave for some reason, or they were running from something, but they went there with goats, pigs, and seeds. They were like exiled there as a people for some reason that we don't know.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
You can exile me there if you want.
100%. Exile me somewhere. Happy to go. So they're here. They also have no metal. So they have wooden swords, stone tools, and no navigational system. So they lived in caves. They had a close relationship with the mountains and wanted to be higher. So they had a lot of like, they lived a lot in caves. They had stone houses. There are some like wild lavender, wild fennel. There's a tree called the dragon tree that looks like the Joshua tree. So it's like a beautiful island. That's why people go there now. You
Yeah, of
know,
course.
that's why it's like a big tourist spot because it's gorgeous. Again, send me there with some seeds. I'll figure it out. It's fine. Um, so so it's pretty isolated. Um, they could have had people potentially swim between the islands, and that's how they would have like communicated with each other in some way. So they had some like translators. They had no writing system, but they had some like paintings. There's some cave paintings that you can see now. So they varied a little bit in culture, but they were definitely from this same like Berber people. And that's where you'll remember in 1977, the movement for the independence and self-determination of the Canaries archipelago did that
Cut it
wrong.
down. You got to cut it down.
I had to do the whole thing. Movement for the independence and self-determination of the Canaries archipelago.
You need to make it snappy. Something that sticks. ISIS, ISIL, Al Qaeda.
So that movement was not very successful, as you know, and a lot of it was because it was super violent. People didn't love that. But they wanted the people of the Canary Islands to go back to speaking their Berber languages rather than Spanish. But it's an interesting thing because I think I want to say this later, but Spanish wasn't even the official language of Spain. Who knows what this place was called at this point until 1492. And so like the Berbers all spoke different languages. The Guanches all spoke different languages. So it's not like there's no really like culture they can go back to because it never was one huge thing and it's changed so much, you know?
Wait, so what was Spain in the 1300s?
It was like the same as like the rest of Europe. It was like a bunch of little um like little kingdoms, little fiefdoms, like little things, you know? And then like eventually it was like bigger and bigger. But wait, I'm gonna just skip to this part because the 1400s is right after the Middle Ages, you know? Like there's not like it's just like we kind of went from like Middle Ages to people doing this like world exploration and pretty quickly I feel like way time is. So like Middle Ages they didn't have a lot of like metal and things like that and then all of a sudden you have this like kind of more opulent Spain. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a lot more to that, but it feels like it's closer to the Middle Ages than I thought it was. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but what's the implication?
Like I felt like when I hear Middle Ages, I don't feel like I can put together like the in my head like a seafaring people like the Spanish
I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
conquistadors felt a little bit like
Yeah,
they had
yeah.
like a little bit more stuff, you know?
Right, right.
But, but um that's what that those terrorists are trying to do when they bombed that airport and indirectly caused the Tenerife Airport disaster. But that, you know, didn't work out. Um, there are some places on the Grand Canary Island that are some like archaeological sites of where the people had lived. So a lot of them lived in caves. On Gran Canary, there is a silo in the mountains called the Sinobo de Valerian, which is a silo, and it's like really cool. It's like a big side of the rocks and it has like little holes dug into it all over where they would store grain and barley and other things. And they would have like these wooden doors over them. And the wooden doors all had markers. So someone would like guard it all night and then they would like dole it out like a store. So it was like pretty advanced for like way they were keeping track of their stuff. And I forgot to say, I watched a bunch of YouTube videos and they're all like 4 minutes long and they have really nothing to say. One of them was hilarious. He was like, I'm here on Tenerife. I'm gonna go to these museums. And he was like, oh, they're all closed today. Thanks for watching. I was like, did you post this?
You know what's funny is I'm on Lonely Planet right now, looking up the eight places to visit in Tenerife. I was just like,
Hmm.
what is it like? Like,
Yeah, it
I
looks
don't know
pretty,
anybody that's
right?
been.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
either. There's also a Cueva Pintada that is a decorated cave, and a Risco Cado is like these complex cave dwellings. So we have the like caves that they used to live in. We know they lived in stone houses, so a very like Stone Age culture. On Tenerife, in particular, it's the largest island, so we know more about them. We do know that they mummified their people, and we know that because we have the mummies. And so not all of the islands did it, but they definitely did. They would embalm them. They would spend time with their dead, so they would like be with them in the high caves. They would actually put them like higher up in the caves to be closer to like the gods. And then I was thinking, where are all of the mummies? Because like even if like just royalty and like rich people are mummified in these cultures, there should be a shit ton more mummies, you know? Because it makes sense that we don't have like everybody's body because they were just like thrown into like a body pit for most of the time. But like the mummies technically should have stayed. Have you ever thought about that?
I mean, what do you, I would
I have the
assume
answer, but did you
you
but
because they're cursed because they'll right.
well, curses aren't real, so
Mm.
no.
That's
But
why they
kind
call
of.
you Buzzkill Taylor.
That's why they call me that. Yeah. But it is actually a magical answer. It's because Europeans ate them.
Ate
Because
them.
hmm hmm they would ground them into powder and use them in magical cures.
That's 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 great.
Yeah.
I think I'm
That's
into
why
that.
that's why we don't have any, and that's probably why Europe is so powerful, because they ate all the mummies.
Oh my God, what if it actually works? But now there's no more mummies.
Now there's no more. Where I don't even know where to find one anymore because
Yeah.
they've all been eaten. So they did mummify their people, but there aren't a lot left because they were all shipped to Europe and ground down to powder. and given to a magician. So
Well, next time we hang out, Taylor, we'll go grave robbing and see if we can find at least like a corpse, like any corpse.
it has to be a really old one because it has to be able to turn to dust. And like, how long does that take?
Yeah, 50-50. If we just get a regular corpse and eat it, maybe it's like half hour. That's
We
fine.
can go to a crematorium
Yeah, there you go.
and just like get some dust.
Love it.
Great, good idea. Fine.
We're set.
Um, so the religion of the Guanches, there was like one god called Akaman, supreme god, and then other gods kind of underneath him as well. And there were some like beings, there are multiple gods. There is evidence that they did human sacrifice, and sometimes they would throw a living child from a mountain at sunrise on the summer solstice, like you do, just to make sure that crops are good, whatever works.
Yeah, it's like midsummer.
Yeah, yeah, and they say that there's also maybe been some human sacrifices when the king died. Adult men would rush into the sea and you know everyone would die, and
Taylor,
they'd throw people into the sea after the king died, which
Taylor,
seems
there's a Hard Rock hotel in Tenerife.
ew.
It's incredible.
I didn't know those existed anymore. Oh, I guess the one in Vegas is moving. I don't know. Well, that's gross. Good for them. Um, okay, so that's a little bit of them before. We know the Romans visited first because Pliny the Elder's friends had been there. In 1150, an Arab geographer named Muhammad al-Idrisi, he visited and made, some notes on the population. So they weren't completely isolated. People knew that they were there. So in now it's the 1400s. Specifically, it's 1402. And that is when the Castilian conquest begins. So it began with the conquest of Lanzarote in 1399. I guess that was just casual because it officially started in 1402, and it lasts until 1496 when Tenerife was the last island to fall, which is a really long time. It's like almost 100 years. So like generations of people are fighting for this.
Nice.
So there's a lot going on in this area and this time, obviously. So you'll remember like Columbus happens in, 1492, which is like towards the end of this, but that's when he like goes across the ocean, blah, blah, blah. But people had done that before. And another thing about that I want to make sure we talk about like seafaring peoples. So the latest Dan Carlin was about his third installment about the Vikings. And he talks in like Dan Carlin detail about what it must have been like to be on a Viking ship because it's like an open ship. There's no like downstairs. And so you're on the ship with, potentially like women and children and families and goats and all these things just in the darkness of the sea, like going and trying to find something, and like finding Iceland or like finding Greenland and like, doing that. And you don't know how long you're going to go. And it's like very rudimentary. So there definitely was that. And also in like Polynesia, Polynesians got to Hawaii somehow on these boats, like out in the middle of the oceans, kind of left to um, it's not a cruise ship. It's like some
Yeah, but
little
so
boats.
many people died.
Of
So
course.
many people probably died.
So people were doing this, have been doing this for centuries. At this time, two of the boats that went with Columbus, either the Nina the Pinta, maybe the Nina and the Pinta, were really small. Like, they didn't have it downstairs either. They were kind of like out in the elements boats. Only one of them was a little bit bigger. But Europeans weren't doing this. They weren't doing that like long sailing out into the middle of nowhere during this time. They were sailing really close to the shore. So one of the things that when Columbus did that was like so interesting to everybody was that he left sight of the shore and they hadn't done that yet. Other cultures
Yeah.
had, but they hadn't. And they I wrote some of Columbus's boats were shitty, and I feel okay saying that because he's Columbus. Um, so the Canaries are a great place to start because you can actually see the peak of the volcano Teide from Africa on a clear day. So it's not that far.
It's not that scary.
Yeah,
Right.
you know where it is pretty much. So if the people of the seven Canary Islands would have had navigation and would have had boats and would have been able to talk to each other, they probably could have worked together, but it wasn't like that. So the Spanish were going to like island by island and conquering them one by one. There's a legend of a Princess Aiko on Lanzarote, and in this legend, a captain named Ruiz de Avendaño and his crew came over and they became friends with the king there, King Zonzamas, and stayed several days. And then dun dun dun, 9 months later, the queen had a blonde baby.
If you want a blonde baby, this next sponsor won't help you produce one, but they could produce a fun shirt. Stay tuned.
This week's episode of Doomed to Fail is brought to you by Naughty Studio. Are you looking for some holiday merch for a friend's gift exchange? A fun gift for a sibling Secret Santa? Check out the collection of inappropriate holiday sweaters and gifts from Naughty Studio. We definitely don't recommend them for a work party, but we do recommend them for a family party where you'd like to make someone uncomfortable and also take a few minutes to yell about free speech, because this is America. Find Naughty Studio, that's Nautee Studio, on Instagram and Etsy. Use the promo code Let's Do This for 15% off your order. That's Naughty Studio. We'll put the link in our show notes. And happy holidays from us. Thanks.
Hmm. Interesting.
Suspicioso, as they say in Spanish. And um, so later, when the island was conquered and the king was taken away, they had to figure out who was going to be the next ruler. And it was going to be Princess Izo's husband, and they needed to prove that she was actually part of the royal line in order to make him the new leader. So they obviously put her in a cave with 3 women who they knew weren't royal and set the cave on fire and filled it with smoke. And if she survived, then she was royal. And she survived, legend has it, by putting a wet sponge up to her face and breathing through the sponge. And she just let the other women die.
I mean,
And
I
then she
would.
became the ruler.
Yeah, I would for sure let them die.
So stuff like that is happening around. But bit by bit, the last island is Tenerife. It's the last one to fall in the 1490s. They have a great king. It is King Tenerife. It's a little bit different, but King Tenerife. And the thing that happens again and again is that he died and he had to divide the island up between his dumb sons,
Ugh.
which always happens. Um, and so you have to be very careful with who's next. 9 sons is too many because they're never going to agree on anything, and you're going to have lots of problems. And so King Tenerife lived in Adeje, which is a town on the southwest of the island. His 9 sons divided up the island into 9 kingdoms, sharing the middle. So the middle, where like the volcano is and the mountain is, they shared that, and then they all had the 9 on the outside. 9 little places.
Kind of
Make sense?
privileged.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not like a ton of land, but it's like a little bit. So of his 9 sons, and this is the most that we know because this is when the Spanish were really in there, like talking to them and getting to know them. So these are actually in alphabetical order. His son Elcamo, he assimilated with the Spanish pretty quickly, and his people even said that they saw Virgin Mary on the beach in the 1300s. They were like ready to be Christian. They did not, but also good for her if she was on the beach.
The
Said she deserves a vacation.
1300s?
So they were like, oh yeah, like 100 years ago, we saw the Virgin Mary on a beach. So we're totally on your side. Probably just to not get killed.
Oh. This like,
You know?
wouldn't that make her 1300 years old?
Well, yeah, she's 1300 years old, but she's the Virgin Mary.
So she can
So
just, oh
she's,
yeah, I guess she can just come and go, right?
yeah, exactly.
Got it, got it. Makes sense.
Miles and I, the kids have been talking about time, and they're like, well, if Jesus is only was 2000 years old, and like, and he's God, then he couldn't have made the earth because earth is older. And I was like, yeah, exactly. And then Miles goes, why do people believe in it? I was like, why do you think? And he goes, guess it makes him happy. I was like, exactly. Super cute.
Wait, I think Jesus is the son of God, but he's not actually God.
Some people think he's both. It's very confusing.
I don't, oh God, it's so hard.
Who cares?
He looked like me.
Anyway, so then his son Adhonia, he signed a peace treaty in 1490 with the governor of the Gran Canaria, Pedro de Vera. He went to Spain and returned to the island to assimilate. So far they were like, cool, we'll be Spanish. Añaverte was the first to join a peace pact, and he provided the Spanish with help against his brothers. So first 3 were ready to give it up.
Yeah.
Then there's Ben Como. He led the most bloody battle, which was in 1494, which was called the First Battle of Acentejo, where 1,000 Spanish were killed. So that was like the one where they actually had a good resistance. And the second battle of Antihejo was a loss, and Bencomo's son Bentor died by suicide because he was leading that battle and he was embarrassed. So Bencomo put up the biggest resistance to the Spanish on his like
Yeah,
little
good for
tiny
him.
part of the island. There's Benhario. He made peace with the Spanish. He took it back because as soon as he made peace with them, the Spanish came in and stole a bunch of people to enslave them. And he was like, well, that's fucked up. And then they apologized and he went back to their side.
Well, it never stops. It
It
never
never
stops
stops.
trying to enslave people.
And then there's Pelicar. He allied with Bencomo in the big battle. He was taken back to Spain to the court of Catholic monarchs by Alonso Fernandez de Lugo, along with six others, and presented to the king and queen. He was sold into slavery unfairly by the royal butler Pedro Pinito, who pretended to be his guardian. And then we don't know what really happened to him. He could have ended his days in Seville as a free man, which is so bizarre that you're like the prince of this ancient king of this island and you end up living in Seville. Like it
I don't know. I
reminds
mean,
me of like
didn't Kim Jong Un just go live in Switzerland or France or something and just go to Disney World all day?
he did, isn't that weird?
I guess you just want to be normal.
He do you see the thing he did this week where he was crying about not having babies?
Was that real? I thought that was The Onion. Was that a real
No, it
story?
was real. He like had this speech in front of like Korean Mothers Association and was like, "We need to have more kids." And he was like fake crying because their population is slowing.
Because nobody's having kids, or they're
So
all
weird
dying.
there. I'm probably all dying. It's so weird that there's a part of the world that we don't know what's happening in still,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And not because it's like undiscovered, just because it's like scary and weird.
yeah. Not worth going.
Ugh. But okay, a couple more kids. Pellinor, he signed the peace treaty in 1490. He ended up receiving a villa and like a valley in the area and kind of like as peace offerings. So he ended up staying there and he got a coat of arms and they lived in Spain. There was Roman. He was taken to Spain, sold into slavery, and then Teguste after in 1496, after the loss of his brother's kingdoms, he surrendered. So he was like the last one to surrender, and that act of submission is known as the Paz de los Rojalios. So sorry to my in-laws who speak Spanish and listening to this. And then that was it. It was 1496. The Canary Islands were conquered by Spain, became the first colonial territory of the Spanish Empire, and at least four of the islands, had like a very violent resistance and tried to save themselves. And it lasted, almost 100 years before they finally did it.
Maybe they're
It's,
still doing it.
well, like barely, and like we don't know who those people actually are. I feel like DNA tests actually be really helpful here because by 1600, like the Guanches as a people were largely wiped out. Like they either assimilated into Spanish culture or died. So it's not like so I think there's what's cool now is that they're able to take like the mummies and do DNA testing on there. So like half the Wikipedia pages are about like mRNA and haplogroups and like where they came from, because then we can figure out where they came from and where they went. But the Berbers weren't just one people either, So it's like it's hard when there are so many little groups of people most of the time. That's it. I feel like I don't know a ton about these people, but it's interesting about isolated peoples because there aren't that many, you
Should
know?
we do one on the North Senegalese?
We should.
I rewatched that John Chow thing and I
I
was
saw a
just
picture of him recently.
howling.
It makes me so mad.
I was like howling and laughing my ass off at like how awesome it was. They just fucking gutted him like a fish. It's like, don't try and change people. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
that's like the most justifiable homicide I've ever heard in my life.
yeah. No, absolutely unbelievable.
I did go, I'm not gonna lie, while you were talking, I did go to Airbnb and I looked up
Oh,
Tenerife. Guys,
mm,
if you want to have like a dream
I'm
vacation
gonna do
for
that
like
now.
pretty cheap, it looks amazing. Like there was one I saw for $42. It was almost like in the water. It was a three-story condo. It was a freestanding three-story building, and it was literally like the water was like in front of you for $42 a night. It's great. It was insane.
Yeah, I feel like it looks really beautiful. I feel like the Canary Islands look beautiful. And like it's cool to think that like you could have just avoided all of that nonsense of like the Crusades, and like all this shit is happening like in Europe, and you're just like, I'm just gonna live in my cave and like fish in these beautiful waters until someone comes and bothers me, and then I guess I'll do something about it. But for whatever reason, and we don't know why they were there in the first place, so maybe they were like doing something bad. Maybe they're doing something cool. Maybe they were like, I don't know. Maybe it's like Australia and they were all the
Yeah,
colonists.
yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
was thinking. I was like
yeah,
Australia. Like, I mean, they're the funnest people out there, and they're all just descendants of convicts.
yeah. So I don't know. Like, who knows? So I hope that they had many, many, many generations of a great fucking time. And then, you know,
Fort all went to shit.
before it all went to shit.
Totally off topic. There's McDonald's is apparently going into the coffee business like full hog,
Hmm.
and they created a separate entity that's called COSMC, so Mick at the
Hmm.
end, COS at the front. So the way I read it is cosmic.
Hmm. Hmm.
And in Austin, there's like an incredibly old, famous, reputable establishment that has several locations called Cosmic Coffee. And I'm just
Oh,
like, I can already see McDonald's suing them for their own name.
poor guys. They have no chance.
I mean, it's
Oh,
gonna be fun.
you can stay at this fisherman's cottage. Oh my God, it's gorgeous. Next to
Yeah,
the
it's
water.
crazy. Dude, dude, like run a
It's so
filter for like
pretty.
beachfront, and it's just like, what is this, $59? What's this one? This is insane, $59
Oh my
for
God,
like
this
the
one's so pretty.
entire
It's like all
unit.
white and it's like really clean and you just, oh my God, and all the pictures in this one, it's just like a open book and a cup of coffee. I'm like, don't threaten me with a good time. That sounds
It's
awesome.
just this is stunningly beautiful.
Oh my
Like
God.
I would absolutely invade this.
I- and you can see it. It's close enough to be invadable. It's not a mystery like the rest of the world is really.
Taylor,
All right, we
um,
should make some plans.
we should seriously make some plans. Talk to Juan.
I know we've hung out a lot this year, but we have only stayed in the country, which is lame.
We could so do this. Yeah, we could rent like a two-bedroom or three-bedroom house. We stay on one side, you stay on the other. We can get something dope. Like imagine if we pulled our money together, like we get a great place.
I know,
Oh my
it's gonna be
God,
amazing.
this one has an infinity pool.
I've never even been in an infinity pool.
I don't even I didn't even know they were real. I thought they were just illusions.
That they were all made by AI for rich people to pretend that they live in these places. What's this one that's $608 a night? Ooh. Anyway. Anyway, that's my
Here,
story.
at some
We should
point,
go there.
look at it's okay, so the one I just slacked you, look at like the fourth picture. So you look at the first one, and that's your pool that's in the center courtyard. But look where
Yeah.
you are in relation to the beach. Like it's crazy.
Oh my
If
gosh, it's
this
so
was
pretty.
in like Miami or California, it'd be like a $37,000 a night stay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's like I'm just looking at the food on the table, which is not what you're looking at, but like drinking mimosas and have a coffee French press. I'm like, yes, that sounds so
Yeah, we
beautiful.
literally all we would do, you know what? Me and Juan would wake up in the morning. We'd go into the ocean with a bunch of spears.
I was
We'd
gonna
bring
say,
home we bring home fish. You and Rachel can gut the fish, and then me and Juan will go swimming while you're gutting the fish. And then when you're done doing that, we'll get out of the pool. We'll grill it up. Y'all can make mimosas. We'll grill some fish. Like it's just like we'll just like live there forever.
I can't think of anything I want to do less than gut a fish.
I
That
know.
sounds horrifying. I feel like whenever I see anybody do it in a movie, I'm like, I wish I was dead. Like I just can't even, I don't want to look at that anymore.
It's like, guys, I know we come back just with skewers of dead fish. You're like, we just ordered takeout. There's calamari in the
Yeah,
fridge.
like I don't know what your plan was with that, but like we're not doing it with that.
That'd be fun. I can be a little fisherman.
I love it. I
Well,
love
thank you for
it.
sharing. And now you just spawned like 50 different ideas on vacations that
If you go,
we
if you've
should
been
go.
there, let us know. If you're European and you're closer, let us know. Like if you're North African and you're closer, you can go there more easier than we can. Let us know if you've been there. I'm sure that people have. I'm sure why
I
not?
I love how we and my episode about a child being decapitated and which woman was holding his head when it came off, and then we go into like we're gonna go into the ancient cultures of these people, and
I
but
want to
it's
make it a
like
little later. Imagine just like really tall, hot people on the top of this an island and, actually cooking their fish and then mummifying their people. And that sounds real nice.
yeah, and somebody was there to gut the fish,
hmm Probably the women.
probably the women.
Ugh.
Um, that is your plight, Taylor.
Um,
Thank you for sharing.
you're welcome. I have one ma piece of mail for this episode. Our friend Nadine asked us if we had ever asked people for their own red flag stories. And our red flags, I think this week are, don't go on a roller coaster that was made by someone who's not a engineer. And if you're isolated, good luck, people are coming for you. But Nadine has a scary story that she was dating someone who was really kind of a deadbeat, and he tried to go and see her at her parents' house, and he took a cab there, and he didn't have any money, so he got out of the cab and hid in the bushes, and the cab driver was like furious and like trying to find him, and then she ended up having to like find him and pay the cab driver, and he was still drunk, and it was just like really awful, and that was her big red flag. She's like, this guy's a piece of
Jesus,
shit. So I'm glad
bad.
you got out of that, Nadine, because that sounds terrible, and stuff like that is crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's rough. That's rough. I
You
love
know?
reading those BuzzFeeds of like tell us the story of like a close call you had, and it's like
hmm
my great aunt went on 2 dates with Ted Bundy. It's like
Yeah.
oh god, so interesting.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, if you have any red flaggy stories or if you're like knew a serial killer or anything like that, let us know. Those are
Yeah,
always fun to talk about.
I'm trying to think if I knew a serial killer. Yeah, I
I
don't
don't
think
think I
so.
have.
Yeah,
No.
it's fair. I'm
But
gonna
yeah,
have to edit all this out. So if I
maybe
did
it's
edit
okay.
this out, everybody know that I had to edit out the past 5 minutes, and that's why it skipped forward in the way that it
Everything's
did.
fine. It's fine.
Everything's fine.
Cool.
So, Taylor,
Thanks,
thank you for
Chris.
this. I'll go ahead and cut off the recording at this point.